everyone. Welcome to Learn English with Podcast. I'm Nikki.
And I'm Tony. We're here to help you improve your English in different situations. Today, we have a very interesting topic for you. It's job interview.
Yes, job interviews can be very stressful, especially if they're in English. We'll talk about what you need to know, what to wear, and how to feel more comfortable during a job interview.
That's right. A job interview is a meeting between you and a potential employer. They want to see if you are the right person for the job. You need to answer their questions and also ask some questions yourself. It's like a conversation.
Exactly. And don't forget, first impressions are very important. You need to dress nicely, be polite, and show that you are confident.
Speaking of confidence, Nikki, do you remember your first job interview?
Oh, yes. I was so nervous. I was fresh out of college and had no idea what to expect. I remember practicing my answers over and over again in front of the mirror.
I remember my first job interview too. It was a disaster. I wore the wrong clothes and forgot my resume. But I learned a lot from that experience.
Yes, we all learn from our mistakes. For me, one important thing is to prepare well. Research the company and the job position. Practice common interview questions and answers.
And if the interview is in English, practice speaking in English as much as you can. You can even practice with a friend or record yourself.
That's a great tip, Tony. Also, try to relax and be yourself. Remember, the interviewer wants to get to know you, not just your skills.
Yes, be honest and show your personality. And if you make a mistake, don't panic. Just keep going.
And don't forget to ask questions at the end of the interview. It shows that you are interested in the job and the company.
Exactly. Ask about the team, the company's goals, or what a typical day looks like.
So, Tony, do you have any funny or interesting job interview stories?
Oh, I have a good one. Once, I went to an interview and the interviewer asked me, "If you were an animal, what animal would you be and why?" I was so surprised I didn't know what to say. I think I said a cat because they are independent.
Wow, that's a good one. I had an interviewer ask me what my favorite book was and why. Luckily, I had a good answer because I love reading.
That's why it's important to be prepared for anything. You never know what they might ask.
Exactly. So listeners, we hope our experiences give you some ideas and make you feel more confident about your next job interview. Remember to prepare well, practice your English, and be yourself.
And now we're excited to introduce our guests. They will share their own job interview stories and tips with us.
Now, we have our first guest with us. He's a recruiter and human resources professional. Please welcome John.
Hi, John. Thanks for joining us today. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Nikki and Tony. Thanks for having me. My name is John, and I've been working in human resources for over 10 years. I help companies find the right people for the right jobs.
That's great, John. So, as a recruiter, what do you look for in a candidate during a job interview?
Good question, Nikki. First, I look for someone who is well prepared. This means they know about the company and the job they're applying for. I also look for good communication skills and a positive attitude.
That makes sense. Can you share some tips for our listeners to do well in a job interview?
Sure. My first tip is to research the company. Know what they do and what their values are. This shows that you are really interested in the job. Second, practice common interview questions and answers. This helps you feel more confident. And third, dress professionally. Your appearance matters a lot.
Those are great tips, John. What about during the interview? Any advice for that?
Yes, Nikki. During the interview, make sure to listen carefully to the questions and answer them clearly. It's okay to take a moment to think before you speak. Also, show enthusiasm for the job and the company. Employers like to see that you are excited about the opportunity.
What are some common mistakes people make in job interviews?
One common mistake is not being prepared. This includes not knowing about the company or the job. Another mistake is talking too much or too little. It's important to find a balance. Also, avoid negative talk about previous employers. Stay positive.
That's really helpful, John. Can you share a story about a memorable job interview you conducted?
Sure, Nikki. I remember one candidate who came in very nervous. He stumbled through his answers at first, but then he took a deep breath and started again. He apologized for being nervous and then gave really good answers. He showed that he could handle pressure and recover from mistakes. We ended up hiring him.
That's a great story, John. It shows that it's okay to be nervous as long as you can recover and stay calm.
Yes, it's all about staying positive and showing your true self. John, do you have any final advice for our listeners who are preparing for a job interview in English?
Yes, my final advice is to practice speaking English as much as possible before the interview. This can help you feel more comfortable. Also, don't be afraid to ask the interviewer to repeat a question if you don't understand. It's better to ask than to give a wrong answer.
Thanks, John. That's really great advice. Now, let's talk about some important words and expressions we heard today.
Good idea, Tony. So, we learned the word prepared. Prepared means to be ready for something. For example, I am prepared for my job interview.
Another word is communication skills. This means how well you can speak and understand others. For example, good communication skills are important in a job interview.
We also talked about enthusiasm. This means showing excitement and interest. For example, show your enthusiasm for the job during the interview.
And finally, appearance. This means how you look. For example, your appearance matters in a job interview. Dress professionally.
Those are some great words to remember. Thanks again, John, for joining us and sharing your tips and stories.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure to be here. Good luck to all the listeners with their job interview.
We hope you enjoyed our chat with John. Now, we have another special guest with us. Please welcome Dr. Emily, a psychologist who specializes in job interview coaching.
Hi, Dr. Emily. Thank you for joining us today. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Nikki and Tony. I'm Dr. Emily, and I've been a psychologist for over 15 years. I help people prepare for job interviews by focusing on their mental and emotional well-being.
That sounds amazing, Dr. Emily. What advice can you give our listeners to help them feel more confident and relaxed during a job interview?
Sure. My first piece of advice is to practice deep breathing. When you feel nervous, take a deep breath in, hold it for a few seconds, and then slowly breathe out. This helps calm your nerves.
That's a great tip. What else can people do to prepare mentally for an interview?
Visualization is another powerful tool. Imagine yourself in the interview, answering questions confidently and calmly. Visualize a positive outcome. This can help reduce anxiety and boost your confidence.
That's really interesting, Dr. Emily. Do you have any advice on how to handle unexpected questions during an interview?
Yes, Nikki. If you get an unexpected question, don't panic. Take a moment to think about your answer. It's okay to say, "That's an interesting question. Let me think about it for a moment." This shows that you are thoughtful and composed.
That's very helpful. How can people improve their self-confidence before a job interview?
One way is to remind yourself of your strengths and accomplishments. Make a list of things you are proud of and review it before the interview. Positive self-talk is also important. Tell yourself, "I am capable, I am prepared, and I can do this."
Great advice, Dr. Emily. Can you share a story about someone you helped with their job interview anxiety?
Sure, Nikki. I once worked with a young woman who was very nervous about her upcoming interview. We practiced deep breathing and visualization techniques. On the day of the interview, she felt much calmer. She told me that she used the deep breathing exercise right before going in. She did very well and got the job.
That's a wonderful story, Dr. Emily. It shows how powerful these techniques can be.
Yes, it's inspiring. Dr. Emily, what final advice do you have for our listeners who are preparing for a job interview?
My final advice is to be yourself and stay positive. Remember, the interviewer wants to get to know you. Also, don't be too hard on yourself if you make a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. What's important is how you recover and move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Emily. That's really valuable advice. Now, let's talk about some important words and expressions we heard today.
Good idea, Tony. So, we learned the word visualization. It means imagining a situation in your mind. For example, visualization can help you feel more confident during a job interview.
Another word is self-talk. This means talking to yourself, especially in a positive way. For example, positive self-talk can boost your confidence.
We also talked about deep breathing. This means taking slow, deep breaths to calm yourself. For example, deep breathing can help reduce anxiety.
And finally, recover. This means to get better or improve after a difficult situation. For example, it's important to recover quickly if you make a mistake in a job interview.
Those are some great words to remember. Thanks again, Dr. Emily, for joining us and sharing your tips and stories.
Thank you, Nikki and Tony. It was a pleasure to be here. Good luck to all the listeners with their job interviews.
We hope you found Dr. Emily's advice helpful. Now, we have another guest with us. Please welcome Alice, who recently went through several job interviews and has some great tips to share.
Hi, Alice. Thanks for joining us today. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Nikki and Tony. I'm Alice, and I recently graduated from university. I've been on a few job interviews over the past few months, and I'm excited to share my experiences with you.
That sounds great, Alice. So, can you tell us about your first job interview experience?
Sure. My first job interview was for a marketing position. I was very nervous, but I prepared a lot. I researched the company, practiced common interview questions, and even did a mock interview with a friend. When the day came, I felt ready, but still a bit scared.
How did the interview go? Were there any surprises?
The interview started off well. The interviewer was very friendly, which helped me relax. But then he asked me a question I didn't expect. What is your biggest failure and what did you learn from it? I paused for a moment to think. I remembered Dr. Emily's advice to take a deep breath and gather my thoughts. I answered honestly about a project that didn't go as planned and what I learned from that experience.
That's a great approach, Sarah. How did the interviewer react to your answer?
He seemed impressed with my honesty and how I handled the situation. I think he appreciated that I could reflect on my mistakes and learn from them. It made me feel more confident for the rest of the interview.
That's fantastic, Alice. What other tips do you have for our listeners who are preparing for their own job interviews?
One tip is to always have a few questions ready to ask the interviewer. It shows that you are interested in the job and the company. I usually ask about the team I would be working with or what a typical day looks like.
That's a good strategy. Did you have any other challenging questions during your interviews?
Yes, I did. One interviewer asked me to describe a time when I worked in a team and faced a conflict. I used the STAR method to answer situation, task, action, and result. I described the situation, what the task was, the actions I took to resolve the conflict, and the positive result that came from it. This method helps to structure your answers clearly.
That's a great tip, Alice. Can you share an example of a question you asked the interviewer?
Sure, Tony. One question I asked was, what are the biggest challenges the team is currently facing? This showed that I was thinking about how I could contribute to solving problems and not just about what the job could do for me.
That's a smart question, Sarah. Do you have any final advice for our listeners?
Yes, my final advice is to be yourself and stay positive. Interviews can be stressful, but if you prepare well and stay calm, you can do it. And remember, each interview is a learning experience. Even if you don't get the job, you learn something new that will help you in the next one.
Thank you, Alice. That's really valuable advice. Now, let's talk about some important words and expressions we heard today.
Good idea, Tony. So, we learned the word mock interview. It means a practice interview to help you prepare. For example, doing a mock interview can help you feel more confident.
Another word is impressed. This means to feel admiration and respect for someone. For example, the interviewer was impressed with Alice's honesty.
We also talked about the STAR method. This is a way to answer interview questions clearly. For example, using the STAR method helps you structure your answers.
And finally, contribute. This means to help make something happen. For example, Alice asked how she could contribute to solving the team's challenges.
Those are some great words to remember. Thanks again, Alice, for joining us and sharing your tips and stories.
Thank you, Nikki and Tony. It was a pleasure to be here. Good luck to all the listeners with their job interviews.
We hope you're finding our podcast helpful. We've had some great guests today who shared valuable tips and experiences about job interviews.
That's right, Nikki. Let's do a quick review of all the advice we've heard today to help our listeners remember the key points.
Good idea, Tony. First, from John, our recruiter, we learned the importance of being well prepared. Research the company and the job position, practice common interview questions, and dress professionally. Also, show good communication skills and a positive attitude.
Yes. And Dr. Emily, our psychologist, taught us about deep breathing and visualization techniques to reduce anxiety. She also emphasized the importance of positive self-talk and staying calm if you get unexpected questions.
And from Alice, we heard about the importance of honesty and using the STAR method to structure your answers. She also mentioned the value of asking thoughtful questions to show your interest in the job and the company.
Those are some great pieces of advice. Now let's add a few more tips to help our listeners impress their recruiters.
One important tip is to be punctual. Arrive at the interview location at least 10 to 15 minutes early. This shows that you are reliable and respect the interviewer's time.
Another tip is to bring extra copies of your resume. You never know if there might be additional interviewers who haven't seen your resume yet. It also shows that you are well prepared.
Yes, and don't forget to bring a notebook and a pen. It's useful for taking notes during the interview, especially if the interviewer gives you important information about the job or the next steps in the hiring process.
And here's a tip for the end of the interview. Always thank the interviewer for their time and the opportunity to speak with them. A polite thank you can leave a positive impression.
Also, follow up with a thank you email within 24 hours after the interview. Mention something specific that you discussed during the interview to remind them of your conversation. It shows that you are considerate and interested in the position.
That's a great tip, Nikki. And remember, be yourself and let your personality shine through. Employers want to see the real you, so don't be afraid to show your enthusiasm and passion for the job.
Absolutely, Tony. And if you make a mistake, don't panic. Stay calm, correct it if necessary, and move on. Everyone makes mistakes, and it's how you handle them that matters.
Lastly, practice makes perfect. The more you practice, the more confident you'll feel. Try doing mock interviews with friends or family, or even in front of a mirror. The more you prepare, the more comfortable you'll be during the real interview.
Those are some final tips to help you ace your job interview. We hope you found today's episode useful and feel more confident about your upcoming interviews.
And don't forget the key words and expressions we learned today. Prepared, communication skills, enthusiasm, appearance, visualization, self-talk, deep breathing, recover, mock interview, impressed, STAR method, and contribute.
Practice using these words and think about how you can apply them to your job interviews. The more you use them, the more natural they will feel.
That's right, Nikki. Practicing your English every day can make a big difference. Whether it's through mock interviews, conversations with friends, or even just listening to English podcasts like ours.
We hope you found today's tips and stories about job interviews helpful. Remember to use the advice we've shared to feel more confident and prepared for your next interview.
And if you enjoyed our podcast, don't forget to subscribe. That way you won't miss any of our future episodes.
Also, please give us a like and share this podcast with your friends. The more people we can help, the better.
And remember, listeners, the key to improving your English is consistency. Listen to our podcast every day, practice what you learn, and soon you'll see great improvements.
Thank you for joining us today. We wish you the best of luck with your job interviews. You've got this.
Yes. Good luck to all of you. And remember, stay positive and be yourself. See you next time on Learn English with Podcast.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.